Okay, guys, Julie just here from Cricket Strength, and we're very, very lucky today to have Phil Richards with us for an exclusive interview. Phil, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, buddy.
No, it's great. I mean, I've known Phil for nearly 10 years now. Steph first put me onto Phil. He went training with him back in mid 2000s in Wales and would come back with all sorts of horrific drills and then get the boys doing it. What was that like with Steph? Was it the first cricketer you'd worked with?
Well, it was funny, because I remember it was 2002, in fact, yeah. And I remember I was taking a group of Swansea rugby players who are now the Ospreys, and Stefan come and joined us for a session, and halfway through the session, he screamed at them. He said, "You lot should be winning fucking everything with this train, because it was just so brutal, But fair play to him, he was always on the cutting edge. Yeah, he was the first. I mean, I haven't trained many cricketers, if you know, but he was a great, he was a great guy to work with.
Yeah, he's completely different as a cricketer. His whole mindset was about everything he could do to just make himself. He was almost the original marginal gains bloke. He'd just look at every little thing and how can that help? And obviously that led him down to you.
Well, and people resent people like Stefan, and I was the same in rugby. I was looking at every single thing that you could do to improve, and at first people sort of scorn you, I should say, and it takes many, many years, for them to say, oh, actually, do you know what? I think what he was doing was actually right,
Yeah,
but you'll get a lot of arrows in your back when you're trying to push the boundaries because people don't like other people who are trying to get them out of the comfort zone,
yeah.
or a break in the status quo like I did, in many sports, and I'm certainly doing now in the nutrition world. I mean, I'm writing a new book at the moment, and also, bringing a webinar out next month, and it will turn the nutritional industry on its head. What we've been taught is correct, is absolutely wrong. And the proof is in the pudding. If you look all around us, whether you're an elite athlete or a member of the public, how many people do you see who've got vibrant health?
Yeah.
It's just not in society. People are struggling everywhere, so,
Is that what? Sorry, is that what led you from obviously the S&C side into more almost being like a health and well-being coach?
well, nutrition was probably, I was a very young S&C coach, and then I went into nutrition in the very early 90s, where I did multiple courses in it because I just kind of realized even early on in my career that, when I was working with a lot of elite rugby players, before the game was going professional, and then I went into professional rugby when it went professional. I just knew back then that nutrition was the absolute key, to performance, and that's what led me into that. I don't know if you're
So
still there, yeah, because your screen has disappeared at the moment. So can you still
yeah,
see me?
yeah, I can still see you. We won't worry about my screen. Don't want what's gone on there.
Yeah.
So I mean, I first came down to your gut brain connection course in Swansea in 2010, and I was just blown away. And so obviously, just being an S&C and just get the basic training for like nutrition, and then come to listen to you and how in depth it was. It was just like, wow, this if we're not getting this side of it right, no matter what training we're doing, they're going to be hitting brick walls.
Well, I think professional sport has just gone backwards. Since I've left professional sport, and I speak to people, who are like yourself, and I got other friends who are head S&Cs of top teams, and I'm still amazed that the amount of money invested into the players' wages, and there's virtually nothing invested into the players' health. And as you know, I now specialize in lab testing and blood chemistry work. And I've studied that now for 3 years full time. I'm just literally coming to an end of one more course before I open up my clinic. And I can tell you, as I've told you before, it potentially can revolutionize our player performance because, back to what I said previously, if that player is not healthy, you can give him the best S&C program, you can have the best physios in there, you can have the best psychiatrists, psychologists, and everything else. The player still doesn't perform, and they continually break down. And as I've discovered, not only from my nutritional research, but from the blood chemistry analysis and the stool sampling, you can see how inflamed that player is, and you can see what part of the diet and what certain supplements are also driving that, because there's a lot of supplements that the players are taking, Ross, which are just absolute dog shit. They cause him more problems, and they're being given out blindly. Diets are being written blindly, and that's why a lot of these players are not breaking down because of the training and because of the game. They're breaking down because of the nutrition and the lifestyle and their poor health.
Yeah, I mean, that leads me on nicely to a topic it really gets to me, is inflammation and how so many players just pop anti-inflammatory all the time. And I know, sort of speaking to you and listening to you and reading all your stuff, how actually, if you get nutrition right, we can actually help that inflammation process go.
Well, it's the nutrition which is driving it, full stop. People think what's wear and tear on the muscles and the tissues. I can tell you now, a well-nourished body can absolutely cope with that, no problem. And the biggest driver of inflammation is a high protein diet coming and a high animal fat diet. Typical of what athletes are on. When you understand how it works and how it drives inflammation, when you consume these foods, you take in a lot more what is known as arachidonic acid. I'll keep it simple, but these drive pro-inflammatory eicosanoids, which causes a lot of inflammation. Now, what I love about the blood work, you can look at the blood work. I don't even need to see the player. You can see straight away, I know exactly what diet that player is on, and I know exactly how inflamed. There's a number of markers which not only will you see in the blood draws, but you'll also see in the stool sample. And this is quite very, very important. I mean, it's just so mind-blowing. I mean, I'm so excited about this new chapter of my career, because what it does, it takes the blindfold off. But I can tell you now, the number one driving force of these players' inflammation is a high meat, high animal fat diet. I can say that with 100% conclusion. I mean, my next book is all on it. It's just, the 5 biggest diseases is caused by excess animal protein and excess animal fat. And that's Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, obesity, and diabetes. And then when you go into the inflammatory side of it, the protein and the fat is also driving that significantly. And there's some amazing tests. There's something called the omega-3, omega-6 index test, where you can look at that straight away and you can tell the player exactly how much arachidonic acid he's consuming and how much that's driving the inflammation. You can look at high sensitivity C-reactive protein there, which is it's like a satellite marker, which is, for inflammation, and that's always increased again, not only when there's more inflammation in the body, also a massive precursor of heart attack and stroke, but it's also increased with a high meat protein diet. There's things like homocysteine, which is another inflammatory marker, another big cardiovascular and stroke marker, again, always elevated in a high, in sort of high protein diets. And then what's interesting, when you look at the colon and you look at the stool samples, and I've done a master's in the microbiome, when you look at what happens down there, because this is very interesting, Ross, because I'll tell you where the inflammation is starting. First of all, it's actually in the gastrointestinal tract, where, that's why I test for leaky gut. You'll find that the vast majority of your players or people listening to this have got a very porous gut known as leaky gut. And the biggest driving forces of that is gluten and also something known as lipopolysaccharides, which are bacteria in the bowels, and they're always increased on a high-fat diet. And when you have a leaky gut, things come across into the bloodstream, protein molecules and toxins come across, and they cause chronic inflammation. So I run a very comprehensive, gastrointestinal permeability test, because you can be on the best diet, then you can be on the best supplement, but if you've got leaky gut and you don't know how to fix it, and I'm not even over exaggerating this, you'll have problems for the rest of your life, because it leads on to multiple other diseases. And the bacteria in the colon can give you an enormous indication on the amount of inflammation that's going on in the body and what's driving it. And I can tell you what's driving it again. And it's the new research, for my new book and my new webinar has just been overwhelming. It's excess animal protein and animal fat.
Jeez, it's a worry because that is the main diet of everyone. So
it's ridiculous. It's sorry to butt in there, but you got people legging protein shakes down as if it's some sort of golden nutritional shake or whatever, when it's causing chronic problems. Because I'll also tell you what else causes chronic inflammation, and I've seen this in 95% of men. And again, you're only going to get this again from a high animal protein diet, and it's iron. And iron in excess is a real massive oxidant, which causes, again, pro-inflammatory oxidation. It's a massive physical degenerator. Your performance will suffer incredibly. As you get older, you are much, much more likely of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, heart disease, stroke. And that's why I'm just so amazed that, as the teams that invest in the players' wages, but they're not investing in the players' health. And I said 20 odd years ago when I started in professional sport, luckily I worked with some good coaches who kind of got it when I finally got through to them. Look, if you've got healthy players, you can win league titles, because you'll always have consistency. And I don't know why it just seems, all the sports I look at now, it's just all about, training. They think they take in, cutting edge nutrition, but they're not, I can say that with 100% clarity, unfortunately.
So I'm guessing from what you're saying, you'd advocate now almost a single ingredient diet. So you're talking about your vegetables with your salads, some meats, your carbs, like your rice and potatoes.
Yeah, much more of a high carb diet, which I never thought I would ever say. As you know, for those who don't know me, which most of you, viewers wouldn't know me, I wrote a book on the ketogenic diet. So I was a huge advocate of, high protein, high fat diets until I realized that they cause so much chronic inflammation. I'm now much more in favor, and again, this is where the lab testing really work. But for those who don't want to get their labs done, which is insane, especially if you want to improve performance. I can only encourage that. But, I would go more for, more of what I call a flexitarian type diet, where, you go to, you don't have to have every meal which contains some form of animal protein, I'm mainly, if I'm honest with you, on a plant-based diet, and I have been now, for the last 5 months, and, I've dropped 18 pounds. I feel absolutely incredible. My fitness levels have improved enormously. You've actually got a lot of players I'm hearing about now who are going on whole food plant-based diets. The only time I would put somebody on a whole food plant-based diet is if they got cancer or they're very sick. I don't think we need to be on a whole food plant-based diet. We just need to massively reduce, and we've got to get out of this habit that we need to consume animal produce with every meal, because it's making many, many people fucking sick, inflamed, and it's crashing their performance. And I could go on, honest, I could go on for hours on the reasons why you need to go on a type of, as I said, on a flexitarian type diet. And as I said, if I look at the blood work, you can see markers there, for example, Ross, where I know we're talking cricket, but there's markers. I've just developed a bespoke blood panel. And why we've discovered, and this is very interesting, especially for those who are listening, if they've got anyone who is near to them who've got cancer, the link between animal protein and dairy protein and cancer is just absolutely ferocious. And there's a number of main reasons, but there's two main ones, is that these particular foods increase something known as insulin growth factor 1, which when you're a young cricketer isn't a bad thing. Because it says what it does in the tin, it increases a growth factor. But the problem is, if you are with that young cricketer who's also got a lot of chronic inflammation, then it's also causing problems. But if you're a cancer patient, it causes the cancer cells to grow as well. And then there's another factor that's been found, and this was found in 1983, because they were wondering, even the World Health Organization has classed red meat and processed meats in the same category as cigarettes. I don't know if you know that. It's classed as a, I forget what stage, but as a real major carcinogen. So you're going to ask yourself the question, then why? Unfortunately, there's multiple questions why they do cause this. And another one is something called NEU5GC, which is a molecule found in red meat. Now, when I say red meat, that also includes red meat is also pork and lamb. And this particular molecule, when it's ingested into the body in humans, I think we're the only, I think there's other great apes that have got this inability to digest this as well. And when we digest the red meat, the body actually sees it as a foreigner, and the immune system starts to attack it. Okay, and we can cope with that when we're younger. It's not a problem. We produce NEU5GC antibodies, but when you consider then that the meat also increases, as I said, like arachidonic acid, which is pro-inflammatory, it increases IGF, it increases your CRP levels, which is another pro-inflammatory, increases fibrinogen. But listen to this now, especially for sports performance. Now, what I've discovered, and again, I've got all the references in my new book and for my new video download, and this is very important for pre-match meals, okay? Now, a meal containing animal protein and animal fat can reduce blood flow by up to 30% for 24 hours. Now, so if you're having like, like a full English for breakfast, and your game is say at 11 o'clock or whatever, you will feel like an absolute fucking slug. You'll think like a slug because it massively decreases blood flow to the brain. And I've also got research from my new book that it also decreases blood flow to the heart. So everything is just so much slower. You become much more deoxygenated. You have much slower thinking. So my pre-match meal for so if we're kicking off at 11 now, I'd go for something like gluten-free porridge with almond milk, and I'd chuck some raisins in, not some berries in there, sorry, and maybe some flaxseed, and you'll absorb that with, you'll digest that within about 90 minutes, and you'll feel, as fresh and as sharp as what you're meant to feel as a professional athlete. So I mean, everything is, and then if you're eating the meat and the fat at every meal, you end up with, and I see this all the time, not only when I look at live blood, but when I look at the blood markers, you'll see that the blood is like tomato ketchup. It's so fucking thick, and again, not only are these athletes then struggling with performance physically and mentally, they setting themselves up for debilitating diseases as they get older.
Jeez, that's crazy, isn't it? So in line with that sort of thing, would you advocate some fasting as well?
Oh, absolutely. And, going back also, because as you know, I wrote a very large book called The Science of Fat Loss. What I discovered as well, going back to the animal protein and the animal fat, because myself, having followed the ketogenic diet and the paleo diet for 25 years, was just, training, some days I'll train twice a day. And, I was just getting fatter and fucking fatter and sicker and sicker. And I realized then I come across a lot of research showing that when even on a ketogenic diet, which is supposed to make you lean, no, it won't. Eventually it makes you fat, because what you got to understand, and I'll come back to intermittent fasting in a second, is that when we consume animal fats in particular, it's only going to one place. Even on a ketogenic diet, it's going straight into your fat store, straight into your fat stores. You have an abundance of fats in the bloodstream, and you have an abundance of fats in the fat store. It's effortless. The greatest myth, I think, in the nutritional industry when it comes to fat loss is that carbohydrates are converted to fat very quickly, yeah? And that is not the case. It is virtually impossible. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult for the body to convert carbs into fat. You would have to do fuck all for about 7 days and eat literally a sack of spuds a day before you get the conversion. It's very metabolically inefficient. And then from a performance perspective, I found literature that I was lecturing 20 years ago that we know that when the muscle cells are full of glycogen, stored carbs, you have much stronger contractions, Ross, than what you do when those muscles are depleted, which is what a lot of people are doing, on the low carb diets. And then intermittent fasting is not only great for, obviously the insulin sensitivity, because the other reason why people are really struggling to lose fat is what I also discovered is that, when the diet is high in animal fat, those fats are also stored in the muscle cells, which interfere with the way insulin is allowed then to get the glucose into the cells. So the biggest discovery for me was realizing that, insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes was not caused by a high carbohydrate diet. It was caused by a high fat diet. And the fat was getting into the muscle cells and into the liver cells, and they increase the production of something known as ceramides. And they prevent then the uptake of the glucose. And then you're left with a huge amount of glucose in the bloodstream, which then gets stored as fat, and then, that's why I'm a big believer, in intermittent fasting. The way I normally do it, I normally have my last meal at 6 o'clock, and then I'll have my first meal the next day around 10, 11, and I do that at least 4 or 5 times a week. And because I think it's important that you break habits as well, because the body just adapts, okay? So, that's how I use intermittent fasting. And
Right.
I'll always train fasted, unless I'm doing weight training. Normally I'll do that about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Hell. So now you've got your the website, philrichesperformance.com.
Yeah, sorry, there's a new website coming up shortly in December, which is just purely on blood chemistry analysis and stool testing. So it's going to be a site that's just specializing in that area. But they can go on PRP, then there'll be a link on that as well.
Now, what would be, I know it's a generic question, but if they were going to start on some supplements, I know for me, I absolutely adore the greens drink. I feel amazing when I'm taking it. But say greens and another couple of things that you'd say to take?
I mean, I think really for me, I think my favorite product is actually the vitamin C plus I developed about 7, 8 years ago. And the reason why I say that is because that allows the blood vessels and the arteries, and it's about 100,000 miles of blood vessels we have. It makes sure that they are very, very strong, and you get optimum blood flow to all the cells. So I always have about 2 scoops of that a day, which gives me about 3,000 milligrams of Vit C, lysine, proline. And, I always have that first thing in the morning. If somebody's eating a lot of meat, Ross, then definitely the alkalizing salts first thing in the morning. A scoopful of alkalizing salts, if you're somebody who just can't get off the meat, you drink a shitload of coffee. When you wake up in the morning, I developed a product again about 9 years ago when I was working with German doctors on diet. And ironically, the doctors I was working with back then, they would very rarely eat meat, and these doctors were, very intelligent people. And I couldn't understand why, but the more research I did, then, I kind of realized, I now realize why. But the alkalizing salts, absolutely. And, those are my big ones. And yeah, the greens drink, I mean, I don't take the greens drinks because I eat so much fucking greens every day now,
Yeah, I see. I struggle with getting enough green food in, so the greens drink is a savior for me massively.
Yeah,
So I
but I
love it.
still think, I know I developed it, but I still think you have to, especially like every day, try to get like, I always know that, I had 2 sort of veggie sort of burger things earlier on, but with, like a shitload of broccoli, sprouts, and cauliflower. And I always cook it in sodium bicarb, because it really softens it as well, and it alkalizes it much more. It's much more palatable. So as you boil it, just put just a level teaspoon of sodium bicarb in there, and I mean, you will not get a better product that cleans out the liver and also feeds the bacteria in the colon. That they become much more anti-inflammatory. And as I said, honestly, this new research is just so incredible. That I just can't wait to get it out there. That's all I can say, because I just think it will help so many people.
Yeah. No, mate, that's all. So you're doing a recorded seminar in December, aren't you? And releasing this information then.
I'm doing the seminar 2 weeks tomorrow, and it'll be available, in the first or second week of December. It'll be about 3 hours, so just watch an hour a night. But I'll tell you now, anyone who does watch that, they will absolutely not put on their plate what they are putting on their plate at the moment. I can guarantee you that. They'll think absolutely twice before what they put into their mouth. I mean, I could write 1,000-page book in this thing. It's just so massive, the subject. And as I say, when you look around us, which I mentioned previously, whether elite athletes or lay people, everyone is absolutely on their knees, and the drive, the number one factor. There are many other factors, but there's no doubt what we eat, what we drink, and you can go on to what we think and the environment that we're in. Those are the major factors why people never reach their true potential.
Well, it's a big rabbit hole to get down. But mate, thank you so much for joining us. Where can the guys find out more about you?
I mean, they can go on my Facebook page. I've got a few spaces left on that. Phil Richards P. If they want to follow me on there, I always post on there, to be honest with you, on a daily basis, as you know. And and as I said, they can go on to they can go on to Phil Richards Performance, but there's not much on there now because, as you know, I sold that company, but I'm still have a big involvement. I develop all their products, alongside, there's another 2 doctors there now that I work with, and we do just great products. But my new website will be called Phil Richards Nutrition Clinic, and as I said, that will be up by mid-December. And it's just geared for one thing. It's consultations, and if somebody really does want to get an edge, then I can't encourage that enough. It really will give them an edge.
Definitely, and I'll second that. I mean, Phil's the first port of call for me for any issue I have, sort of medically. It will be Phil way before a doctor, and I couldn't trust him more. So, mate, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you soon.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks, mate.